going to give one more of our panelists a few more minutes to,
There she is.
just like the watched pot, right?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Tony.
Hello. Well, I think it's about time to get started. So thank you everybody for joining us, to our panelists for joining us today. We thank you. And for our attendees, thanks for joining us on Zoom today. Let's see, first I'll outline the schedule. We have an hour planned, and it's broken down into, first we'll have some comments from our panelists. Then we will have a time for a Q&A. We'll wrap up with the smallest section. We're going to do a video of available apartments as well as our amenities tour. We have a new tour to launch today, and we plan to conclude by the 11:30 hour. In the meantime, if you have questions for our panelists, please feel free to use the chat function of the Zoom to pose your question. Kat is on Zoom with us and will be monitoring the chat during the presentations today. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. The Admiral at the Lake is a life plan community, and currently we're at 93% occupied, and that holds true at the end of 2020. And we have both independent living residences as well as the full continuum of care. And our independent living residences, we have 196 apartments, and those are a variety of different floor plans from 1 to 3 bedrooms, as well as different views and different setups. As well as we have the Harbor's Healthcare, and that is, we have assisted living apartments, memory support suites, as well as private nursing suites. And we invite you to learn all that the Admiral is by either checking out our website at admiral.kendall.org or contacting the sales and marketing offices. But let's get started with our presentation today. We're going to be talking about the resident experience here at the Admiral at the Lake, and we have some residents that have agreed to join us and provide their perspectives and their experience of living here. And first, we're going to start with Tony Smith. Tony is past president of the Resident Council. She's involved in the Lifelong Learning Committee, which brings high caliber programs to the community. And Tony, would you please introduce yourself and say a few remarks?
Sure. As Katie said, I'm Tony Smith. I am actually 6th generation born on Manhattan Island, which makes me a dyed-in-the-wool New Yorker, except I've lived in Chicago for 60 years now, and I consider myself a complete Chicagoan, and it's been great fun for me to watch this city grow and thrive over those times. I have lived most of that time on Lakeshore Drive in the Lakeview area, and I spent 30 of those years with Spencer Stewart, which is an executive recruiting firm, and most of that time I was the partner in charge of their not-for-profit practice. So when I retired, I spent my time volunteering and serving on nonprofit boards. That's a little bit of my background. I moved to the Admiral in 2014 in February, just about 7 years ago. And I was attracted in part by the layout of the apartments. I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment with 2 balconies, very close to what I had in the high-rise I was living in. I also have a great view. Katie talked about the views. I look north where I have a nice view of the lake, but I also look west where I have a 180-degree view. I'm on the 28th floor, and I look directly out at O'Hare, and I can see the towers in Oak Brook Mall and the towers at Schaumburg, and it's never quite, there's always something going on in that direction. I also looked at various comparable buildings that were fairly new at the time. that had, the same independent living and assisted and all the rest. But there were two reasons right at the outset that I think attracted me here. And the first one, very importantly, was the people. I knew one couple who lived here, and they invited me for dinner, because I wanted to see who lived in a place like this. And I found a dining room full of people who were talking to each other, who were having a great time. The vibe was very good. And they introduced me to some people who they thought had similar interests, and I was very warmly welcomed. People were very open. So that was one attraction. Another actually was that I knew I could get downtown really quickly. I was still volunteering at a lot of things that were downtown. I did a lot of my shopping there. All of my cultural events were downtown. And I certainly plan to continue to do that. And I did not want to have to drive really far at night after theater to come home. So that was another, the location was another big attraction. Once I got here, I discovered to my delight that not only can I reach Lakeshore Drive, which is a half a block away, and drive downtown, but I can hop on a 147 bus, which I gleefully have said goes nonstop from my front door to Bloomingdale's in about 10 minutes when there's no traffic. But I had never spent much time in the Uptown Edgewater area before. Once I got here, I found several good surprises, but three that really stuck with me. One was that up at this end of Lincoln Park, there's this great expanse of park and walkways and Foster Avenue Beach. Happily announced to my children, I bought beachfront property here. But that has been a godsend with COVID, because it's a great place to walk. You don't get bored because you have lots of options. You can walk with friends or walk by yourself, go over to the lake, meditate, whatever. That has really been a godsend. And another thing that I had not known about was Andersonville. Andersonville there's Clark Street is sort of the heart of that area, and that is about a 3/4 mile walk or drive. And it's full of wonderful, funky shops and restaurants, and it's got a villagey feel. So that was a nice thing. And probably the third thing, which I am an avid theater goer, and I had not realized how many small storefront and small theaters there are in this neighborhood. There have to be probably 25 or 30, and some of them really do excellent work. And so with all of that, I've been very happy living here. And that's my story.
Great. Can you touch base a little bit about the resident, how we're resident driven and what that feels like for you?
Sure. It means I get to say a lot about what I want to do. The philosophy here is independent living is independent living. And so we have a lot of amenities. We have a theater, we have fitness center, we have all of these activities that one could do, but we have to decide what to do them. The people who moved in here basically said, well, there's a movie theater, we need to have movies, and they started a movie committee. There's a big auditorium and we could have speakers. They started a lifelong learning committee, and various other committees that started, and the administration is hands off on some things that affect everybody in the building, like dining services or marketing or facilities. There is a resident committee that meets with the staff responsible for that and gets their input resident input into decisions that are being made early on, not after the fact, and then what you can do is complain. And so that, as I've tried to explain, and I've been president of the Residents Association until January of this year, it's resident driven. It's not resident managed. The administration does a great job of managing the building and the facility and all of that part, healthcare. But in terms of the activities, from gardening to, as I say, movies, any of that, residents do that. And if residents don't do it, it doesn't happen.
It's always interesting to me to see like what's new and what's happening. Last year, they had the introduction of the bees. I had somebody come who wants to do a couple new events that they're talking about that will be resident driven, a polar plunge and a golf outing. And so there's just always
a polar plunge.
Sounds like a crazy idea to me too. So thanks, Tony. Whenever I talk with Tony or I bump into her, she seems like she's just back from downtown or has been to someplace fun like the Botanical Gardens or to an event. And it's just a reminder that I need to get out and take advantage of all that Chicago has to offer. It's right here, just steps away. So thank you, Tony. Our next speaker is Harris Mckee. Harris is a friendly face that we see throughout the community. He's an active leader and has been involved in a number of committees, including he's on the Resident Technology Committee. Welcome, Harris. Thank you for joining us today. Could you please introduce yourself and say a few words?
Thank you, Katie. I'd be glad to. Well, first of all, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, went east for college to Dartmouth and west to Stanford for graduate school. I've been married for 60 years and have 2 daughters, one here in Chicago and one in Wisconsin. I've lived in about a dozen states, including 20 years in Arkansas before coming to the Admiral at the lake. We have lived here at the Admiral 4 years, and as I mentioned, moved from Arkansas. Both my wife's mother and my mother chose CCRC living. It was a great gift to my wife and me because we were living far away from either mother. And about 4.5 years ago, I determined that we should look for a CCRC soon. We'd always intended to go to a CCRC, but I recognized we had some urgency. We considered a CCRC in Arkansas, where we had friends and lived in, several in the Chicago area. We'd loved living in Arkansas and really had expected we'd stay there. But as we looked at the CCRC there, it was too far from our village to expect to continue activities like playing golf 3 or 4 times a week and evening meetings. And we realized that we would have to start over even there, and if we were going to start over, we might as well do it where we were close to family. Our daughter suggested the Admiral, and I explored online. We had not lived in any multifamily dwelling since our poverty-level graduate student housing. Initially, I was really averse to considering a high-rise like the Admiral. But as we walked the grounds of another CCRC with a campus-like structure, the convenience of taking an elevator to another floor and walking a few steps to visit another apartment compared to walking across a windy, cold plain, even to go to the dining room, became very attractive. We have not regretted our choice for a minute. We came to the Admiral without really appreciating the value of being a life care community and didn't recognize the distinction of being admitted with life care versus being admitted without the life care designation. In fact, during our tour of the Admiral, we didn't even visit the harbors. However, that distinction of life care or not life care is very important from a financial standpoint. If you have life care, the extra cost of being in the harbors is the extra cost of 2 meals a day. Without life care, you pay nursing home market rates. Just for this reason, I recommend to anyone considering the Admiral to not wait too long. Besides, if you come early, you can experience living in a place where living is really fun. As it turned out, access to the harbors has been very important to us. Just after our second anniversary, my wife fell and broke her pelvic bone. Before returning to our appointment, she rehabbed at the Harbors. In November 2018, another hospital stay for pneumonia prompted a return to the Harbors, this time for more than rehab because both cognitive and physical limitations meant that she could not return to our apartment. In every aspect of her harbor stays, both for rehab and now as a permanent resident in the skilled care area, our family has been pleased with the care and especially with the staff at every level. The care partners are warm and caring, the activities staff provide stimulating activities and are supportive in our efforts to maintain contact as we contend with the limitations of COVID. For example, they set up an Amazon tablet on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for family Zoom calls and connect my wife with our Sunday morning church service every week. BC, that is, before COVID, I could take my wife from the Harbors to the dining room every evening. Similarly, I could take her to Admiral chorus practice, where we both sang. When programs or activities were scheduled in the gathering room, Harbors residents were encouraged to attend and staff members regularly provided the motive power to get them there. I could also join her for any meal in the Harbors without advance notice. For us, the Admiral at the Lake has been a great decision for our entire family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harris, for sharing your story. Harris mentioned his family, of course, and we're very fortunate to have his daughter, Laura Mckee, serving as the president of our board of directors. The Admiral of the Lake is a 160-year-old not-for-profit, and we're very proud of our history and our values. So thank you for sharing. Next, we have Linda Crane and Jerry Bloom. They're our next resident speakers. They moved into the Admiral recently, and they're just wonderful people. We're truly fortunate to have them in our community. Linda and Jerry, welcome. Could you please introduce yourself and share your new resident experience?
Sure. Thank you, Katie. And thanks to everybody who's attending this webinar. We are thrilled to be able to share some of our experiences. A little bit about us. We both work for Sears. Sears in the glory days when it was a merchant to the millions. I was here in cities here and around Chicago. I ended my career at Sears, responsible for the merchandising sections of the iconic Sears wish book.
And I ended up in Pittsburgh Regional Group, responsible for everything home fashions. Still today, there are people that say, after you say you worked for Sears, oh, I remember picking out toys in the catalog when I was a kid, in the wish book. I remember having Craftsman tools in the return policy, or I bought all my kids, Winnie the Pooh kids, clothes at Sears, or I worked for Sears. So it's a big family. In the glory years, it was anyway, but there's still people.
Linda and I knew each other early in our careers, but she went east and I stayed here in the Midwest. And then much later, several years later, we got back together. So we started dating each other, and I was in Chicago, Linda was in Pittsburgh. We met in Toledo, Ohio, and we became, after a couple of years, became experts on what to see and do in Toledo. Linda moved to Chicago and we got married.
We started a consulting business, and actually for Sears did a remix of the Sears wish book, Think Toys. And for 5 years spent some great weeks at the New York Toy Fair looking for the new hot toys and the all-time favorites.
So we're waiting for the neighborhood events to resume, excuse me. But in the meantime, you'll find us at the waterfront, taking photos, walking, exploring the area by foot and by car, taking trips to Starbucks, and as we call it, just plain geezering.
We've lived here a little over a year now.
We moved from a small townhouse community in Lake Zurich, Illinois, suburbs, where we lived on the lake. Why did we choose the Admiral? 20 years ago, we joined a downtown church. And we took an auto, took a car, and a bus several times a week on the 70-mile round trip to attend and volunteer at the church. We're looking forward to more extensive downtown exploration and all that is Chicago. The one selling point for us was easy access to downtown. And as Tony mentioned, we just take the 147 bus and we're there in about 10 minutes.
So we knew about the Admiral before it was the Admiral, and we followed the stories of friends who signed up to move before it was built. How we got construction updates, we got downsizing attempts, and we got their move-in details. And we accepted their invitation to come and visit and see the waterfront eating place and the people, as Tony described them, all enjoying themselves, etc. And eventually, it took us a while, we were ready for the waiting list.
We wanted to be close to Lake Michigan and close to downtown and of course close to our church.
We love the Admiral's newness and the vibrancy of their decorating colors in the halls and public areas.
And of course, another practical reason, as Harris covered pretty well, I thought, we wanted to develop our own life care plan. And we also didn't want our kids to have to do it for us.
As we prepared to move in a year ago, Kelly of marketing was there every step, showing us the apartments, listening to us, focusing us, counseling us, and giving us the practical information of the move itself. She was our cheerleader. Want to make some changes, as we did, want to. Kelly made sure everything went smoothly. Need a mover? Kelly had a list. Moving day was the smoothest one I've ever done, and I've done several. From having the movers having access to an elevator, to meals for us and our kids, to the Admiral on the Lake big beach bag that had a lot of essential items, including toilet paper.
Welcoming to the community was warm. Several residents invited us to dinner, and we always went to meet people with questions, and they always had the answers. If we went down to dinner by ourselves, the restaurant manager would sit us at a community table where we met more people and also got to know a lot of people better. And the marketing team, couple assigned by the marketing team, met with us and gave us everything you want to know about Admiral books and answered even more questions.
And then once we moved, we had set up meetings with housekeeping, culinary, concierge, among other staff, for their tips in their particular areas, and also to know who to ask about what. So fast forward a year, that would be now, we made the right decision. From our apartment, we marvel every day at the sunrise, the changing clouds, and the lake. And I now am the proud owner of a couple of books on Lake Michigan. And at night, the Chicago skyline. And in the spring and summer, we just discovered the lights of Wrigley Field are nightlight.
The residents here are friendly and inclusive. Among a wide range of activities we do is strength and balance exercise, now by way of Zoom, lectures, lifelong learning time together, and especially the neighborhood trips that we do with a resident here who's a lifelong tour guide and really knows this neighborhood very well and makes it kind of exciting for us. So we've recently joined a couple of committees here to get us more involved in the community and to know other residents well.
And not to forget the food and the variety. Personally, we love it and cook very little. Other residents cook much more, but it's your choice. And the point to end on, the excellent and friendly staff. Tested this year, more than probably they've ever been tested. They have all the culinary, the facilities, the concierge, all have done heroic work, both in and outside of the job descriptions during this pandemic. Katie?
Thank you so much, Linda and Jerry. That was wonderful. We appreciate all the residents sharing their perspectives. The key talking points that we highlighted: a resident-driven community, the strength of connected living, our healthcare and harbors, and most especially how the people here are warm, welcoming, and friendly. Really, all of those make the Admiral a truly special place. So thank you for taking time to highlight those key points. And now we'll jump into the Q&A portion of that piece. I'm just checking a few things here. Okay, so I think we get a lot of questions, and I think a number of people on our Zoom today would like to know what has been your experience of, and all of you have somewhat alluded to it, but could you expand? And I think we'll start first with Tony. Could you expand about your experience of living at the Admiral during COVID and what it's like today?
Sure. It's been different. You've heard about, going down to the waterfront for dinner and visiting with people, and that doesn't happen during COVID. And I've described it actually at the beginning when everybody was sequestered and nobody knew what was going on. There was a lot of anxiety. People were getting food delivered to their door. But one of the things they did here was they took the wait staff, most of whom are young college, high school, young people, and had them deliver the food. They were also the people who came and took our temperature every day. And that was a wonderful thing for people because they got to talk to these young people and have conversations, got to know them a lot better. And it actually became kind of a high point for them. Then things opened up as you know, this started in sort of late winter. And so then as the weather got better, we have beautiful gardens here. We have a wonderful terrace on the 6th floor and a beautiful garden down at ground level. People started using those garden spaces to get together outside with their masks on. But pretty soon we were having people having cocktail hours out there. Your tables, and you could sit 4 people feet apart at tables, and sometimes they bring their dinners out, and we have grills out there, and people started grilling. So people felt much better, and by that time you could go down and pick up your dinners, and you had to stand in line 6 feet apart. But while you're standing in line, you get to see other people and you get to talk to them, and that made a difference. So people were happier then. Right now, things have moved back. As you know, Chicago had a surge. We had to pull back, and restaurants outside closed. But people now are used to it. They're resilient. They're getting creative. We can still have 3 or 4 people at the most in one apartment or something. And so people invite another couple for dinner and have dinner in their apartment. You may go down and pick it up and bring it up. Or as Jerry and Linda said, I cook. Some people cook. So it has been obviously not a great experience, but given the situation, it's an excellent experience. And what's really important is that everybody I have talked to about this, heard anything from, has said they feel safe here. They feel protected here. They are so glad they're here with a community rather than stuck in their high-rise anonymous apartments in somewhere else in the city all by themselves, where they don't quite know what's happening. Because the other thing that happens here is this administration has been very open and with frequent communications about, has anybody tested positive? What's going on with vaccines? What's happening? Those came daily at one point. Now we don't have to have them daily, but people here, I think, are grateful to be here. They feel this is really the safest, best protected, well cared for place they could possibly be.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tony. Also, there is a question here that someone asked. I think I'll pose this to Jerry and Linda. How are residents staying active during the pandemic?
But I think it's interesting because a lot of our friends that don't live here talk about how bored they are and how tired they are of ordering pizza and that kind of stuff. We actually are pretty busy. I don't think we've had any days where we got up in the morning and said, what are we going to do all day? Some of it's self-generated, like we said, we go walking a lot, but much of it is generated by residents here. Tony is on lifelong learning, and she has marvelous programs that they put together for us. Her committee puts together for us to view on Zoom or on our in-house TV stations. Harris, who really is, you mentioned he's on the technology committee, but he's more than that. Harris, our printer didn't work, and Harris was up here to fix it. And you'll see him everywhere in the building. You'll see those set up, either in-house TV or
Thank you. Harris, I think Jerry and Tony have touched on this, but there's another question that if you have things to add or you think haven't been touched yet, the question is, how are residents staying connected during the pandemic? Will I be able to meet people if I move in now? I was hoping you could answer that question as well as kind of highlight some of the ways the Admiral's using technology and the Admiral TV to stay connected.
Okay, thank you. Sure. Well, clearly it's more difficult to meet people when you can't get together for groups. However, there are a number of things that we do in technology that have some of which have already been mentioned. One thing that we do to help people get connected, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we provided an Amazon Dot to everybody who requested one. And what the Dot does is provide a smart speaker that people can find out what's going on. You can ask the Dot, what's the schedule today? What are the meals today? You can even ask, is the mail in? So that's one thing that we've done that provides people an ability to know what's going on. And the other thing that was mentioned, I think, particularly by Linda and Jerry, is that we have gradually begun to use technology to provide programs. We're having a Zoom meeting today to be able to tell you, guess about what the possibilities are at the Admiral. We have also begun to do many of our programs using Zoom, so that whereas before we were depending on speakers that we could bring to the Admiral to make their presentation, we're able to include speakers now who aren't even in the Chicago area. And so that's a way that people can interface with other people on Zoom and ask questions and see them on the Zoom meetings. And this kind of thing has made a big difference. And one of the things I mentioned technology, Katie, we have a resident committee on tech support. Every 2 weeks we meet, and originally this was a computer support group, but we realized we're providing help to people not only on their computers but also on their smartphones and their tablets. And this is a resource that we all have, and we've been able to get together on Zoom during the times when we were shut out because of COVID. There are also programs going on. We have a great decisions group, 3 sections meeting beginning in February to talk about foreign policy issues. And we've just gotten approval to be able to meet in the Lighthouse Lounge for those meetings where we'll have people masked but meeting together. And if we should have a setback, then we'll do those on Zoom. So there are a number of ways that people can still get together to know each other better. And as Tony mentioned, even in the dinner line, you get to see people and chat for a few minutes while you wait to go get your food.
Great. And there are also common spaces that are open that people are using with social distancing. But thank you for highlighting the technology. There's a couple questions here. Tony and Jerry are both on the marketing committee, and part of the marketing committee's role is around welcoming and bringing new residents, helping them get acclimated and making sure that they feel welcome. So I have two questions that I think I'll pose to Jerry and Tony as well as the other panelists, but let's start with Tony. The first question is, what can I expect in my first 30 days of living at the Admiral at the Lake? And I think Linda really did highlight quite a bit of that. But from the welcoming committee perspective, you might share that. And the second question is it easy to meet other residents at the Admiral at the Lake? I think those two can kind of be tied in together. So Tony, could you highlight on that first?
Sure. First thing that's happened, obviously, by the time you moved in, you've met a marketing team that's worked with you to help you get here. And I'm talking with COVID at this point, because pre-COVID, it was very easy to meet all sorts of people. But even with COVID, soon after you move in, like depending on how many boxes they see still sitting there unopened, a resident will come visit you, as Jerry and Linda said, with a book that gives a lot of the information you want to know about, like when are dining hours, how do I get rid of trash, all those kinds of questions. And spend a little time, if you choose to spend time, that's your choice, and introduce themselves, introduce that person. We have on the marketing committee and around the building, people who make it a point, as soon as they know someone new has moved in, to get in touch. With COVID, I mentioned these, being able to have people for dinner. We have residents who have done that, I think, for just about everyone who has moved in during COVID, invited them for a meal along with somebody else so they could meet a couple of people, and then move them on to someone else to introduce them. So the people here are trying, the current residents are really trying to make this a good experience. We've opened up most of our committee meetings obviously are on Zoom. And so we've opened those up to anyone who wants to look at those. Frankly, when you first move in, it's a little discombobulating and you may not necessarily want to be bombarded with a lot of information and a lot of people. We try to match what you're ready to do, but there's a whole bunch of people here who are anxious to meet you, anxious to help you, both on the staff and within the resident community.
Jerry, did you have, or Linda, did you have anything to add, or did that kind of cover what you would have?
Just a couple of quick things. The marketing committee used to, through each of the resident committees, have a social hour once a month where all the residents were invited to join together for snacks and basically wine and soft drinks. And we're restarting that now. Obviously it's virtual. So we're going to get together once a month. Each different resident committee will sponsor a month. We'll get together for conversation, and both as a community and in breakout rooms. And of course, the only problem is you have to bring your own booze, BYOB. Go ahead.
And I'd like just to add one thing, is that people are friendly. So when you're in line at the bistro and you see somebody that you don't recognize their eyes, what I have said is, have I forgotten you, or what is your name? And then they say things like, I've only been here 2 weeks. So you get to know people. You'll find that more people than not make the extra effort, as Tony was talking about, to get to know you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So there's a question about downsizing, and it sounds like from your introductions, some people move from out of town, some people move from an apartment. Can you share your experience? So these are our attendees, are people who are considering moving to the Admiral, and they're also, figuring out their next move. So can you talk a little bit about Jerry and Linda as the newest residents? Would you like to talk about first about downsizing?
Sure. Actually, we've been downsizing for 10 years, but it's been an ongoing program. To be comfortable in your space, you take the things that you love and you make hard decisions. We made hard decisions on what art that we thought somebody else could use and that we couldn't use. But I'll tell you, we could have saved a little bit more art and put it in the halls, because in the Admiral, you can put your art in the hall if it doesn't fit in. And more is better than less, because you'll find that you can live with less than you thought you could. We now have a wall unit that's in one whole wall of our den, floor to ceiling, to put those things that we did not downsize and maybe we should.
Yeah, we got rid of a lot of stuff. A friend of ours said it's like peeling an onion. You go through and get rid of stuff that you haven't used for a year. Then you go back through again and peel the onion and get rid of some stuff that you thought you might use. And actually we got it, and it's tough, and some people don't quite make it, but we actually downsized probably too far to come here, I think is what Linda's saying.
Sure.
I guess our theory is to get rid of things that you can buy again if you have to, if you made a mistake, and keep the things that can't be replaced.
Right. Harris, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. Before we came, we were able to get a map of the apartment we were going to use, and I got a small computer program that let me do a layout. We moved from a house with 2,500 square feet, a garage, an attic, and a separate storage shed into an apartment with 1,050 square feet. I measured the cabinets in the new apartment and the closets, and then I figured out what would fit. And so, as Jerry said, we picked the things we particularly wanted if they fit. And when we had filled the apartment in a way we considered decent, we walked away from everything else. Every week I've thought, I wish I had that tool from my garage, but we left it behind.
And I would say, Katie, I did the same thing, only I didn't have a computer because I'm not as good as Harris with that. I did it with pencil and paper. But the same thing, that measured everything carefully. I ended up having to make a few hard decisions, but basically, again, the marketing department was very helpful in terms of coming to look at what I had in my apartment, my old apartment, and saying, this will fit. You may want to think about X, Y, and Z.
Thank you. And we do partner with a move manager and downsizing expert who works one-on-one with our new residents to help them manage the move. Typically, whatever offering we're providing at that given time in the sales department includes time to work with Marnie Dawson, and she's just invaluable in helping people with the process. So, okay, we have another question, and it's two questions I'm gonna group together, and I'm gonna have Harris take this one first. So there's two questions. One is, are there people from other parts of the country, like Boston, or are most of the residents from the Chicago area and its suburbs? And then the other question is, am I too young to move now? So do you want to talk a little bit about, Harris can start, and maybe I'll probably send it to the other panelists as well, but Harris, can you start and answer a couple of those questions from your perspective?
Certainly. From my perspective, people who come here fit really two or three categories. One are people that have lived in the Chicago area for a good part of their adult life. Another is the people who find that they have a child who is in the vicinity, as we did, which made it a really desirable place to come. And the third group are people for which the Quaker Association makes it an attractive place to want to live. So that there are people here from California. We came from Arkansas. There are people from Florida, people from Georgia. And so you see quite a mixture of people. You see a great variety of the careers that people have had, so that when you are interacting with people, there are always great opportunities for conversation, and the variety that people bring here is quite unique and marvelous.
Tony, would you like to add to that?
No, I think we have people from all over. The largest number of people who have lived in Chicago and who are helpful in orienting people who are not as familiar with Chicago. But again, they come from all over. We have people who basically we have Germans, we have Dutch, French. So it's a very cosmopolitan group.
Great. Linda, do you have anything you'd like to add or additional comments?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Jerry does.
I guess the thing that impressed me the most is the backgrounds people have and how interesting the conversations are. I mean, we have doctors, lawyers, and I suppose Indian chiefs too, but there's some really good stories that people can share with you.
Wonderful. We do have a question here. This is a good one because we're running out of time. So this is a good question to end on. I think there are some questions that we haven't been able to get to, and we promise we'll answer those to the individuals one-on-one when we jump off of the Zoom. We can contact you. And there's more on my sheet here that we haven't been able to get to. So this is a good sign that maybe we'll do some more of these type of events in the future. But let's end on, for the Q&A, let's end on the question, what is the thing that surprised you most about living in a senior living community? And let's start with Linda and Jerry.
How active, the vibrancy and the activity level. There was some question about how old should you be when you moved in. It depends on you, but you can live as actively or inactively as you want, but it's hard to live inactively around everybody else that's active. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the most surprising thing for me.
Yeah, me too. I think people here don't act like old people.
Maybe that should be our tagline.
Yeah.
Harris, you want to touch on that point?
Well, I think that one of the things that I had not realized in our decision making to come here was how much transportation could be provided in a couple of ways. Tony mentioned the 147 bus that takes you downtown in 10 minutes. Another thing, we went to concerts downtown on Wednesday night and Saturday night through the summer for the symphony, riding on the Admiral bus. And the Admiral bus is also available to take people to doctor's appointments, and also makes runs to the grocery stores and Target and things of that kind, which I didn't know was here before we got here, and that was really a great benefit to us in doing activities away from the Admiral.
Thank you, Harris. Tony?
Well, I was nervous moving here because I have lived in cities and high-rises almost my entire life. And that's a very independent and fairly anonymous way of living. And I was very concerned about the idea that this might be like a small village where everybody knows everything about everybody else, and you can't escape from all these people. And what I found here, which is wonderful, is that, yeah, everybody knows a lot about other people, again, pre-COVID, but it's not intrusive. People are really thoughtful about, whether people want to be involved or not. But they're also watchful. And if somebody suddenly looks like they don't feel well or something, someone's apt to notice that and take care. Again, it's a community. It is very much a community feel here. And I can't stress that enough, because I think it's one of the things that makes it different perhaps than from some other places. Somebody I know in the chat asked about the Quaker connection. It's not so much Quaker, you don't feel Quaker here. You don't feel like that's, really part of, but it's the value system. It's the value system about caring for people, about being respectful of other people. And that I have never felt that sort of claustrophobic feeling of, oh my goodness, I'm in a tiny little town and I got to get out of here. And that was a surprise. It was a very nice surprise.
Beautifully put. So this was wonderful. Thank you so much, Linda and Jerry, Harris, Tony. I really appreciate you sharing your perspective and hitting those questions right. Thank you so much. I think it helps everybody to hear from you, the residents who have that experience. It's not just, what we're talking about. It's truly the lived experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're gonna. Sorry?
I just said thank you.
Oh, thanks. So we're going to now show our most recent video, which was an exciting project to work on because we worked with a company that does drone videos. So currently we have a video that we're going to show you that highlights some of the amenities. And we also, a key piece of the videos are for us to be able to show available apartments, which this video is going to show the amenities, and then we have individual videos that show available apartments. So I'll turn it over to Kat to show the video. Thank you, Kat, for sharing that. There are, as I've mentioned, we also have video tours available of available apartments. And our website is a great resource for people to see what is available. Our floor plan page shows our available residents, and it includes the tour as well as has images and floor plans of the available apartments. We are also open for tours, and we can meet with you in person. So please feel free to contact Kelly Corcoran or any of the sales and marketing staff here at the Admiral. Today's event was recorded and will be available on our event page of our website if you'd like to revisit it or share it with any family or friends that might be interested in the program that we offered today. We are currently offering a move-in special on our available floor plans. And again, if you're interested in learning more about that, it's both on our website, as well as I'd encourage you to speak with one of our staff, specifically Kelly Corcoran. Most of you are talking with Kelly along your journey, and she's available to answer any questions you might have. And if you're not quite ready, but you're thinking you'd like to learn more about the available apartments as they come available, we do have a wait and ready list brochure that we could share with you that tells about the benefits of the wait and ready list. But that concludes our program today. I want to thank again our panelists for sharing their experience, and I want to thank everybody who jumped on the event today. Thank you for attending. And I'd also want to give a shout out to my team, to Kat, Nora, and Kelly for helping to plan and host the event. But we hope to see you soon at the Admiral at the Lake, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.